Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm joined by Bruce Fitzpatrick.
Good evening.
And we don't have Sam Williams with us this evening on the time of recording. We have got fellow nerd stato Ed Jenks, who's a contributor on our website, writes pieces for us on statistics and all the fun things about golf, has joined us for a little chat this evening. Ed, welcome.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for having me, guys.
Making your debut on the Cookie Jar Podcast.
I know. I feel like a fresher. I feel like a debutant.
Well, you're going to be put to the test today because you're here to represent the statistical part of this. And that's usually my thing. And because I don't really know what I'm talking about, I usually just kind of just wing it. But actually, we've got someone who knows what they're talking about now.
I don't think anyone does. I think that's a pretty good policy.
So to sort of round up, we've not podded for a little while, guys. We've not podded for a couple of weeks. And a few things have happened. There's a few things to talk about, aren't there? So we're going to have to briefly mention the waste management. And I think that's worthy of discussion on its own. And then we've got last week's event in Riviera. We've got Phil Mickelson dropping bombs and some news about the Saudis and their golf league. So it's going to be an interesting chat. What's your, how have we all been? What's your take on the world of golf these days, Bruce?
Well, yes. I mean, it feels like it's usually about this time of year where things really kick off on the breakaway leagues discussion. Obviously, you know, the Saudi International was just a few weeks ago now. And that definitely, naturally it spurs a lot of discussion around the future of these leagues, whether they can really get off the ground. There's a fantastic podcast by No Laying Up with Andy Gardner, November, December time last year as well, which is still kind of ringing in the ears somewhat. And so it feels like it's all really coming to a head at the moment. It feels like, we've had the sort of the drama of, hearing stories of Ian Poulter being offered 22 million, Lee Westwood being offered tens of millions and having to sign an NDA, Bryson with this sort of eye-watering 130 odd million to be the star or the face of the Saudi league. And then, in the space of really, it seems about 72 hours, all of that has come crashing down and cold water's been poured all over it, whilst Joaquim Niemman's cleaned up round Riviera. So, yeah, I think it's one of those sort of strange times, really. It's all happened quite fast, I think. That's my sense of it, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Although, I don't probably have as many words to describe it as Bruce, but... Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Because things have been happening at such a pace off and on course. There's obviously been a couple of huge events, waste management, as I said, and then Riviera. And I feel like they kick off the new year so well, and then there's normally a bit of a lull before we go into Florida, and then there's some WGC and some elevated events, obviously the players. And we've had plenty to talk about with the SGL. It's odd, isn't it? Because I feel like we all feel like we knew so much, or certainly I did, and yet so little has been confirmed publicly. And now it's kind of, I think everyone kind of has accepted that this is now either dead in the water or certainly struggling. And for a while, it felt like there was so much momentum building, and nothing really came of it. And then before we even knew any specific details about it all, it was all kind of hearsay and behind the scene and rumours. So, yeah, interesting for sure, and a lot to digest.
I think it's a strange one, isn't it? Because you've got, like you say, there was so much being banded around. I mean, we might as well start with this because Bruce just taken it there straight away, which goes off piece straight away. There was so much banded around about what Bryson was being offered, and it was, I mean, to all intents and purposes, from what you read, it was kind of slam dunk. He was gone, and it's kind of like you've got a bunch of people playing chicken, just looking left and right and thinking, who's going to bottle it first or who's going to jump first. And the dominoes started to go, didn't they? McIlroy is quite openly been against it. He's had the the interviews in the press that he's just come out and said he's sick of it. Dustin said no. John Rahm said no. Did they did those big boys making those big decisions? Do you think that influenced, what Bryson was able to say and do?
100%. I think, and even if you look at Bryson's statement, it wasn't even, and the other statements we've seen have been, Rahm's rather Shakespearean. I pledge my fealty to the PGA Tour or whatever, and McIlroy say I'm fully committed. Bryson's was even kind of half-assed. It was, whilst the good players are still here, I'll play. But yeah, I mean, as you said, the dominoes started falling with Phil's interview with Alan Shipnuck, which was or was not off the record and was just an absolute. I mean, some of the quotes in there.
Yeah, that needs some discussion, dissection. Yeah. Go on,
some
Jenks.
of those quotes were beyond comprehension, and then it seemed like we were being fed the three pillars that the tour was being built around were Bryson, DJ, and Phil. And then I imagine, it certainly felt like Phil came out with these obscene statements and kind of interview. DJ kind of got scared and realised his only two allies were a deranged Phil Mickelson and Bryson DeChambeau, and it's kind of like, as soon as DJ, I mean, he was the only top 10 player, wasn't he? As soon as he goes, it's hard to see Bryson and Phil lugging it on their own.
So go on, Jenks, give us a little bit more context, because for those of our listeners who've not seen the Alan Shipnuck article, which came out middle of last week, I think.
Can I just jump in? Was this an assassination by Shipnuck?
So Shipnuck is writing a unauthorized biography on Phil Mickelson, which is coming out in May, and this was a pre-release sectional part. So they had this interview back in October, November time, and it was a phone call, I think it was, and at no point supposedly did Phil say this is off the record or this is just between us. But obviously, given the content, you'd imagine that he was hoping that wasn't going to go anywhere.
Because it seems like a complete hatchet job, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't sound like Phil's best mate's not gonna release this, is he? You know what I mean?
No.
Well, look, I think reading between the lines here, Mickelson is basically saying that he feels the PGA Tour is a dictatorship, and Jay Monahan and the powers that be just really don't want to give an inch. They just will not entertain any idea that there's any kind of rival breakaway league, and they're really coming down hard on the fact that they kind of own tour players essentially. So they own, Phil makes reference in the article to the fact that the PGA Tour owns all of these highlight reels of great shots that have been hit over time, and really I think the bone that he has to pick is that players aren't rewarded fairly. And
what do you think about that?
I'm just going to set the scene with the Shipnuck article. It's basically come out and Phil has said, look, I know the Saudis are a pretty unsavory bunch.
Scary
and
motherfuckers.
They've killed Jamal Khashoggi and they've done all sorts of, he literally calls them scary motherfuckers. But he's saying, I'm doing this because I want to force the hand of the PGA Tour. And Shipnuck, to be fair, says, well, look, this has worked quite well because, there's news that the player impact program, that purse has increased to 50 million. The FedEx Cup playoffs money increased to 75 million. The Players Championship funds increased to 20 million. So, clearly there is some evidence there that Phil's theatrics have had an effect and have been successful. I think it's actually goes
Phil,
back.
though, is it? It is not just Phil. This is like there's a lot of pressure, Bryson pressure as well. But
no, and there's pressure from Bryson, there's pressure from a lot of other top pros, and I actually think I've referenced it once already, but I do think that Andy Gardner interview, and for those of you who've not checked it out, the podcast with Noel Engart with Andy Gardner on the PGL. Also, there's other articles out there, Golf Monthly on the PGL with Andy Gardner, are well worth checking out because that is a different side to the breakaway league, but it's still part of the same discussion. And while the PGL is no longer affiliated with the Saudis, there's a lot of themes that are cropping up here that we've heard in November, December time, and that are rearing their head again this time of the year with the Saudis. And actually what's mentioned by Andy Gardner, the issue it sounds like they had with the PGL when trying to do a simultaneous exchange and completion, which is, it looked like what the Saudis were lining up, is that they couldn't get us to cross the line at the same time. And that seems to be the case here. Although you've got Bryson being offered 130 million, Poulter 20 odd million, it seems like all the players are kind of looking up and down, seeing is everyone going to take that big step at the same time. And it's just not happened. And then, enough of them have got cold feet for the whole thing just to fall apart, it seems, in the space of about 72 hours. And yet, actually, at the Genesis press conference a week ago, Kramer Hickok was saying, I know that the 17 top players who've already signed up to this thing and it's a done deal. So it's amazing how quickly that whole landscape's changed. And
these players that have, because you're clearly more in the know than both of you, more in the know than me, because I generally know nothing, which is quite handy. These players that are signed up, officially or unofficially signed up, and they've said they're going to be over. Have they made their bed now, or are they all going to?
So, and this is the point, and I think as a fan, we're kind of owed some of this, is, as Bruce alluded to, Kramer Hickok comes out and says what we all kind of know and have been hearing for months or weeks, is that there are 17 guys who have put pen to paper. And of course, we know, Bruce mentioned a few of them. There's Justin Rose, Poulter, Westwood, Casey, quite a few English blokes, actually, which is a bit disappointing. There's Phil Bryson, Harold Varner, DJ, and the rest of them are kind of hidden behind the shield. I mean, supposedly Bubba Watson's going around, trying to recruit these people, but a lot of them are going to be able to come back onto the PGA Tour without any repercussions. I mean, Phil is obviously might be made a martyr of, because he's been so outlandish, and this interview is so ridiculous. But I don't see how you can really skewer the players, especially because, as Bruce alluded to, some of these players are discontent because they're not being treated like the premium product of the PGA Tour, which is kind of what they are. Whereas, I don't know, I can't really see the PGA Tour then turning around and not welcoming them back, apart from Mickelson, who, by the PGA Tour's bylaws, if you bring into disrepute the sponsors, the players, or the PGA Tour, I don't really see how you can not really fine or ban this guy for, at least some length of time, especially because he's the only one who's not come out and said, I am now committed to the PGA Tour. Yeah. And on top of that, he went to actively structure the league with attorneys in Saudi Arabia. I mean, that is just incomprehensible that he would then go and set up a rival league himself. I don't see how Mickelson doesn't get some kind of repercussion.
But it's mega though, isn't it? Because this is the guy who won the Player Impact Program. And this guy won the PGA last year, and yeah, I mean, as the Player Impact Program, whatever sort of hidden metric that's based on, he's the most engaging player in golf right now. So, I
don't think he's not part of the PGA anymore. Though. I think he's a bit screwed.
Yeah, but to be honest, I don't think Jay Monahan comes out of this looking particularly well either. I think, for as crazy as some of the remarks are that Phil makes, I think there's probably, at least you could say, well, he's probably, fairly honest. If someone calls him out and says, well, yeah, you're greedy, like Brooks Koepka did, or, people pointing towards things like the match or the other things that exhibitions that Phil's played to win money, like, yeah, he is greedy, but I think he admits he's greedy. Whereas the PGA Tour, he's just saying, look, it's not what it seems. And I do think that it's, if there was no case to answer, the PGA Tour would not be, increasing these prize funds by such extreme amounts. And they wouldn't be reacting to all of this and commissioning a Netflix documentary and doing all these other measures if there wasn't, something to answer for here.
I just think they're getting scared, though. I just think, there's already a gross amount of money in golf. There really is. It's a disgusting amount of money in golf. Yeah, but this isn't filtering down a huge amount, though, is it? You're talking about the PGA. You're talking about the players, the Player Impact Program. You're talking about the FedEx. You're talking about the top level. You're not talking about this filtering down to Corn Ferry or the Challenge Tour or even the DP World Tour. You're talking about the top level PGA stuff, and I think they're just getting backed into a corner where they think throwing money at it is going to solve something.
I also think, I think there's some element to what you said, Bruce, that's true. But I think there's also some things I may push back on. But I agree that the PGA Tour is definitely having to satisfy based on the comeuppance of these rival tours. Or, as you know, in that interview, Andy Gardner was quite intent on saying that the PGL doesn't really want to be a rival tour. It wants to work in conjunction with the PGA. But that's an aside.
Well, no, I think it's part of the discussion, definitely.
I'll come to that. But I think the PGA Tour has been doing that for years, and obviously part of their new television deals and part of their the top players for a long time are disproportionately paid in the eyes of a lot of American sports and how much revenue they generate. Because, you know, the fact that Charlie Hoffman has spent 1 week in the top 20 in the world and he's earned $20 million compared to Phil's, $90 million. Phil Mickelson is far more a product of the PGA Tour, marketable, gets sales, gets views, gets huge TV deals than Charlie Hoffman does. But he's paid, only, quote unquote, 4 or 5 times that, but he's 10, 100 times more the draw. So I think this disgruntlement from the top players has been there for a long time. I don't think necessarily this is just a reaction to the Saudi Golf League. I think this is kind of a 5-10 year thing that we're seeing accelerated by these leagues. And I also think that we have to, you said, you don't think Jay Monahan comes out of this too great either. And to some of that's true, but I think with Mickelson, we also have to kind of separate a little bit what is, eye-catching and what is working for him in the marketing sense and what is maybe true, because I think a lot of what Mickelson has put out is just flat out wrong. Like he's, come out and said the PGA Tour are hiding a $20 billion business from us, or they're hiding $600 million in revenue a year. And it's like, that's not the money that the PGA Tour has to play with. That's just wrong. Someone's, in his ear, or he's looking at the NBA, which is a much bigger league.
Yeah, he's talking about potential, isn't he, rather than actual, So, yeah.
And also, the PGA Tour is bound a lot by its charitable status. It can only distribute revenue in a performance-based scheme. It can't just hand checks to its top 20 guys. That's what it's tried to do with the PIP, obviously, and it's done a pretty good job. But maybe it's a little bit too late, maybe a little too late. But also, I think that, the PGA Tour's hands are tied in that sense. I don't think necessarily we can all put this on Jay Monahan and say, yeah, Phil's got a point. I think a lot of what Phil is doing is selling you the wrong image purposefully so that he can get an easier boat across to a Super Golf League or something like that. I also think that a lot of this might be hyperbole because of his financial struggles.
I think that almost comes full circle there, though, Jenks, because as you're saying, like the charitable status of the PGA Tour locks out quite a bit of money from it, apparently, and this is why you can't really have this discussion about the Saudi League without looking at the PGL as an alternative there, which is something that promises to bring a lot more money into the game and also reward players who are slightly further down the ranks, not just the top 20 guys. It seems to be more equitable from that standpoint. I think, there's also they're talking about the timing element and the fact that this has all been quashed for now at least, on the back of a fairly engaging week at the Waste Management Phoenix, and also an interesting week at Riviera, which is Tiger's event. It's a very interesting, or architecturally interesting and eye-catching golf course, and it had literally the top 10 players in the world all appearing at it. It's like, I think it's easy to say, yeah, you know what, there's nothing wrong with the PGA Tour. We've had 2 stellar weeks now, but if we cast our minds back to the Amex, which wasn't that long ago, you think, that was bloody boring. And it's no wonder that the Saudi and the PGL breakaway leagues develop a bit of momentum when you have the more, dare I say it, sort of budget events that are being played.
But I've got 2 points to raise on this. I think point number 1, I think someone or some company that would have been head in hands for the last 2 weeks thinking, what on earth? Has to be Callaway in this. Because back in 2017, in all of when Phil was in full thumbs up and doffing cap mode, they give him a lifetime sponsorship agreement. So he's now locked in with Callaway for life, and he can go absolutely ballistic, and Callaway's still got to sponsor him. So they're probably thinking, what the fuck are you doing right now?
Yeah.
But the second of all, I think the PGA Tour have actually got a really good opportunity here to really pull out the samurai sword and chop his head off, because he is coming to the end of his career. He won't play Champions Tour, and both of those things he's come out and said. So they could actually, at this point, the PGA could make a real example of him and say, no, there's absolutely what you've done, not having it, not coming back, banned. They probably lost 3 years of Phil, four years of Phil.
Do they kind of prove his point though? do they kind of prove his point and say, yeah, actually,
No,
yeah,
but it'll stop other players in future going off and being, trying to spark up rival leagues.
But how many players are there that can actually do that can spark up a rival league? There's really not that many. Like, we're talking about the second most successful player of the last 25 years, probably.
One of them, yeah, for sure.
Well,
there's
no, he's the second. There's Tiger and there's him.
Yeah,
and
there's not many players that got a draw.
Yeah.
But I think if Bryson had gone forward and said, yeah, I'm all in, chips in, he would have pulled a few players with him. It doesn't all have to happen immediately, does it? It could have, it's all iteration, isn't it? So if 5 of the top 20 in the world go across, more will go over time.
I think there are certainly players who still would have gone across. I think what Phil has done is scare them when he's openly admitted that he's not that interested in this league in the Shipback article, but he's just using it for leverage. Using the Saudi government against the PGA Tour for leverage. I mean, not only does that defeat the point of leverage, it also lets all of your, supposed teammates in this venture know that I'm not really here for you. So I think, if Bryson
comes out of it terribly, actually, when you put it like that.
He does. And that's why I think the PGA Tour, as you said, Mills, could easily lob his head off. I mean, like, as you said, he's not, committing to the Champions Tour. He doesn't have many years left. And he is, if this article's to be believed, he is the architect of this whole thing.
Yeah, I think they could. It's going to be an interesting few weeks, I think. Really, I mean, we've got the players coming up soon, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all unfolds now, moving into major season as well. We've got a few tournaments that we need to talk about. We need to talk about the waste management, and we need to talk about Genesis. I think the Genesis was really interesting. I actually, for one of the, maybe because it had such a strong field, but for the first time in a long time, I really enjoyed just sort of sitting and watching the grind. I mean, but let's go chronologically. Let's start with the waste management. Is it golf? Go.
It's golf. It's definitely recognisable as golf. Just.
I mean, we need to draw attention to obviously the 16th, the two holes in one. Hole in ones. And, they started going ballistic. They're all a bit excited. Beers on the green, takes 20 minutes to clear. But then it started going, Justin Thomas chips in, beers on the green. It's just like,
Well, that one for me was the hilarious moment because it's like, JT, he looks like he's loving it to begin with, and then he gets hit with a beer can, and all of a sudden his face just drops, and he's like, when Justin Thomas says it's too far, you've taken it fucking way too far because that guy likes to get the crowd really sort of riled up, doesn't he, at Ryder Cups and
Harry Higgs,
finger to the ear and all sorts. Yeah,
Harry Higgs with a par putt takes his top off. I mean, what is going on? Like, really, what's going on?
Yeah, it's ludicrous. I, for one, definitely enjoyed the spectacle. I think there's a place for it. If you just section that event off and just say, right, there's one event a year and it's just going to be mental, and if players don't want to turn up because it's not that serious, or the golf, there's an element outside the golf, fine. But from a viewer point of view, I mean, I was excited on Sunday to wake up and actually watch the final round, watch players come through there. I know, and all right, there has to be a line drawn somewhere when players get hit by beer cans, they got to sort the cup situation. Fans need to know that hole-in-ones, all right, you can go berserk, draw a line at chip-ins, whatever. But I thought the spectacle was good, and I thought the PGA Tour leaned into it. They had that little interview booth on the way out with Colt Knost. I think it was good. I think they actually kind of pulled the fans in for once, which you mentioned earlier, Bruce. I think the PGA Tour, I'm not a fan of it. I'm defending it in the PGL sense, but I think it can get a lot of flack for monotonous.
I agree with
72 hole events, and I think the Phoenix has a place in that to at the very least diversify.
I think it is. It's definitely diversification for sure. It's very, very odd, isn't it? Like allowing this one event, and it does tend to get amazing crowds. Like it's on Super Bowl weekend always, and the Saturday's always absolutely crazy. Sunday's a little bit more subdued, but I don't know. For me, as a purist, I struggle to see them, lobbing beer cans on. They're taking 20 minutes to clear it before the next player can play a shot. It's just all a bit much. And don't get me wrong, I would love to be there. Like I would love to be in the crowd.
I think you could probably do it once in your
day
life.
out.
Yeah, and then you never want to go back again. I
think it'd be a great day out. Don't get me wrong. But there's a really good blog article by James Day from Sound of Golf, and if you get the chance, check it out. It's brilliant because he talks about it. And he says, for me, not for me. I don't want people getting pissed up watching golf. I'm all for the players getting pissed up and playing. I'd pay to watch that.
Yeah.
And I read that. I had a little chuckles myself. Thought that was really good.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Mills. Actually, I think James's piece is brilliant, and I don't, maybe if you cordon it off to one event, it sounds like we're all kind of saying the same thing. Yeah, if you limit it to one event, then maybe it has an appeal, but it kind of smacks of some of the criticism we had of the Ryder Cup, the most recent Ryder Cup at least, and just the sort of the hooliganism that's kind of disguised as growing the game. Or dressed up as growing the game. Look at the fans, look at the participation. It's like, I'm not sure these people who really want to consume golf think they just want to consume their body weight in alcohol and like just get, thoroughly pissed up and probably not watch much of it and then throw some alcohol onto the greens. Like, I just don't really, for me. No,
there has to be a line for sure, but I think, when you see clips like that, like the Sam Ryder hole-in-one, because it's accompanied with the shot, at least in that sense, in that context. And when that, does the rounds on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever, I think genuinely people see that and go, I can go to a golf event, I can go view it because it's good fun. You might enjoy yourself while there. And then the conversion rate from that, all right, it might not be the most efficient way of growing the game, but I think it does something to erode the stuffiness of golf, which is which is the barrier to that most people don't get.
But it's again one of those things of the PGA Tour we've talked about at the top of the show. It's like we've moaned about it on this podcast for many a year. It's very mundane, stroke play, 72 holes. They can't really get match play to work. They're trying to do something different, I suppose, and we're lambasting them for it. But they're doing something different than hiding behind the rhetoric. It's like, this is great, isn't it? We're growing the game. It's fantastic. Have you seen all this? But I think we all know that if that behavior happened on a normal golf course, it wouldn't be growing the game. They'd be booted out and that would be
there's a double standard there, isn't there? And it's like, let's also not lose sight of the traditions that make this game as wonderful as it is. Like, the sort of the respect for your playing partner and, the idea that after someone's holed out, you still afford the people who have still yet to finish that hole some kind of respect. And like, when Justin Thomas chips in and then gets pelted by beer cans and like his partner's like waiting for an hour and a half before they can putt out, I'm obviously exaggerating it, but it's
there's definite things to tidy up about the event, but I think, I don't know, it's not a step in the right direction, but I think one, it does a lot for the schedule. It engages people this time of year, and I think it does, hopefully take down some of the grandeur of golf and what people think of it.
Yeah, it has a story as well, and I think that's what so many events are lacking is like, there is a really great story to, it's like Waste Management Week. You'll see the PGA Tour highlight reel is like covered with some of the best hole-in-ones over the course of the event history. And like, that's engaging. They can't do a similar thing for, I don't know, the Barracuda or the Barbasol or whatever. It's like, what's the defining mark of that? The Genesis, like there's some brilliant champions. I'm pretty sure, it's where Tiger made his debut. There's a storyline there that you can pull on. So, definitely agree with you there, Jenks. It's good that it has actually kind of a sort of standalone personality in a way.
Yeah, and I think you can't undersell how important ticket sales, feet through the door are for the PGA Tour or for any tour. I mean, the DP World Tour is increasingly struggling. And you flick that on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and they're playing, at some golf course in the Middle East or in Germany or somewhere, and it's just desolate on the sidelines. There's no one watching. And
don't they get like 400,000 through in Waste Management each
exactly
day?
And it's something like that, because you're enticing people. You're not just selling people on the golf, and it's like you can come through the door, and if you enjoy the golf and pick something up because of that, then great. But as you said,
I think afterwards they turn it into a concert, don't they? Every day they've got different concerts and all sorts of things. I think it's
which is happening this year at the Scottish Open. There's going to be a concert in between rounds up at the Renaissance.
Oh, nice.
So I think that does a lot. As you mentioned, it's Super Bowl weekend. People are already buying into tailgates and parties that weekend. I think it does a lot for people at the events, which doubles up on the atmosphere and the watchability of it.
What I was really disappointed at, though, was considering it was the birthplace of, this is just a nice, easy 9-9 for them. They're going to go nuts when he hits it. And then when Tiger gets that hole-in-one on the 16th at Waste Management, then he's walking off and he's giving it the raise the roof with the hands, like that 90s raise the roof thing. When Sam Ryder and Carlos Ortiz in 2 days got 2 hole-in-ones, not one of them gave the homage and did the raise the roof. I was wanting them to rock down, giving it the raise the roof symbol, but they obviously they're not historians.
no respect.
There's no respect for the big man there. I thought I'd give it a raise the roof at least.
Moving on to his event in earnest.
Yeah.
Well, are we going to cover the golf at all from the golf event, or is that?
I don't care. Who won?
Scotty Scheffler. Debut victory.
Was it?
Yeah.
He's been around forever.
I know. Yeah, hard to believe, isn't it? Given how consistent he's been.
He does look like he's about 45 years old, to be fair.
Yeah, he's just knocked Bruce off his feet. He's so floored by that info. He's gone.
But it was a seriously strong field as well. It wasn't far off, Genesis this week. And
they get field rankings, don't they, for these events?
Yeah, exactly.
It was a. I mean, you did a little piece the way you said the European Tour, where what was it? They had the bare minimum amount they needed.
Yeah. So the way it works is, just as a high level view, is the best player in the world brings 45 points with them. The second best brings 40 points, so on and so forth. And at some point, as a global recognised tour, the PGA Tour and the European Tour, their event cannot go below 25 points. So they say, even if you bring a field that's only worth 13 points to us, we're going to give you 25 anyway, because we recognise you're a leader tour in the world. And the week that the Waste Management Phoenix Open was bringing in about 500, I think. The DP World Tour hit its floor of 25, which it had the week before as well on the back-to-back.
Is that because they had basically, I think it was 17 of the top, in Riv, there was 17 of the top 20 in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, there wasn't a DP World Tour event when Riviera was on, but it was the week before during the Waste Management at Ras Al. Right. I keep butchering it. Is it Ras Al Khaimah?
Yeah, Ras Al Khaimah. Well, and they went back to back, and both weeks at that course, they got the bare minimum 25 points, which isn't a great look when across the pond they've got nearly 500 and then nearly 600.
And that has an impact then. So that weighting their tournament gets, that has an impact on how many OWGR points you can get.
Oh, yeah, completely.
So basically, the lower that is, the less likely people are going to go and play it because it doesn't help them.
Yeah, it's kind of a self-fulfilling thing, really, isn't it?
It is to a sense. But I mean, the week that I put it on, the Ras Al Khaimah Classic or Championship, whichever way they went round.
Yeah, very creative naming, wasn't it?
Yeah, Richard Bland was the highest ranked player who's like 56th or something. And as you said, Riv got 17 out of 20, and the Waste Management got I think it was 7 out of the top 10 players.
Yeah, it's been strong. It's been a strong couple. I think it's been a fairly weak start to the year for the PGA Tour. I've been fairly uninterested in the golf that's gone on, but it's got strong. I think because we're heading in, like we say, to major season. Got the players coming up. Yeah, going to get across to Florida next week. Is it the Honda next week?
It is, yeah. Which is actually a pretty arse field, but
is it?
You got to get through that to get to the Arnold Palmer. It's peaks and troughs.
So let's talk Riv then. I mean, Joaquim Niemman out of nowhere, Cameron Young out of absolutely nowhere. The two.
Well, Joaquim Niemman's
been around for a long time. Yeah, he's been around for a long time.
Let's just body check you on that one, please.
He's in the top 20 in the world, to be fair. But he's not really shown any evidence in the last little while that he's going to come and destroy a top field, which is essentially what he did. I mean, statistically, This is where I'm going to get nailed. Over the first 2 rounds, he was 16 strokes gained on the field.
Yeah, which is nuts. I mean, for some context, that's more than enough to win a PGA Tour event a lot of the time. If you get to around 14, you've got a great chance of being in the playoff or winning or being right there. So
over 4 rounds,
to get there in 2, you can say he cruised from there to get in, but he quite literally did. I mean, he beat the field by one shot.
The mouse clicks in the background.
Yeah, you can't hear the mouse clicks. It's completely. It's just not. It's just not.
I just wanted to
shatter
any illusions that Ed Jenks was the greatest statistical mind in golf this side of the Atlantic. We can hear the mouse clicks in the background, but do carry on, Ed.
Yeah, well, on mine. No, he only gained a shot on Saturday and lost 0.15 on Sunday, which is not pretty if you're going out with a lead, but. Yeah,
he said he didn't need to. He'd basically done the work by Friday.
Yeah, but he had, which is, as you said, just mental to think. His ball strike in round 1 was unbelievable. He gained 6 shots on the field, tee to green, which is, again, if you do that throughout the whole event, that's normally enough. And then add on, 7 or so putting.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I think one of my favourite stats from the whole thing was Cameron Young in the second round that picked up 8.5 strokes to the field in 1 round of golf.
Yeah,
I mean, it was. Talk to me about Cameron Young's swing. It's got the hints of the Hideki's. I mean, he's probably got nearly as much of a pause as Hideki.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he'd create a load of speed, but he does. I mean, he really moves it out there.
If there's any, conversation for rolling back the driver face of the ball, he was mishitting a lot of drivers on Saturday and Sunday, and he was charging out 186, 188 mile an hour ball speed with a, one-hand heel cut finish.
That's one of your specials, Bruce, the one-handed finish. The 300-yard one-handed finish.
Yeah. So
roll back the club face.
Well, that's about 18 mile an hour over tour average on a miss hit.
Yeah, it's big stuff, isn't it? I mean,
and with a pause as well, which a lot of people would say would rob you some speed. I mean, Joaquim Niemman as well, without wanting to go down the
here we go,
the swing vortex, because
this is what I like.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that Jenks is also a fairly kindred spirit on the swing front. We've got to get his take on this.
I've got 2 swing nerds with me.
You have indeed, yeah.
Oh, great.
Joaquim
I'll just sit back on this one.
Joaquim Niemman is like a modern day Lee Trevino.
Yeah,
really, isn't it? I mean, Jenks, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, you wonder how long he can do it. I mean, because Trevino and Seve to an extent had similar events, and they are similar moves, and they kind of struggle with low back pain as well. But I mean, the way he bends, not even necessarily impact, but just after, his shoulders are pointing vertical. I mean, his spine.
Okay.
Shoulder ratio.
I'm going to have to stop you because you got to talk to me like I don't geek out on the swing. So what is different about his swing that somebody else's, which makes it?
He has a huge amount of lateral right bend, thoracic right bend. There's probably some lumbar bend in there as well, which is less advisable. But basically, every golfer has some amount of right side bend in their body in order to get their right shoulder lower than their left at impact, and to preserve some amount of bend in the right arm. Every great player, every great ball striker has some sort of bend in their right arm. There's different amounts depending on how flexible you are, and it's not necessarily the case that someone with the most bend in their right arm will be better than someone who's got slightly straighter arms. But as a general rule of thumb, there's some fantastic players out there who have a huge amount of right side bend. They get their right shoulder quite a bit close to the ground at impact than it was at address. And Joaquim Niemman is just an absolute freak of nature in that regard. Kind of similar to DJ in that, it's just really hard to get the body to cooperate and be that flexible at that speed.
To cooperate.
Yeah. But to have that amount of right bend at speed, like when you're sliding and rotating, he's got a very stable club face as a result. But he just and hits quite a flat ball flight. But
he takes a silly amount of loft on it. Some of the drivers he was launching Saturday and Sunday around 3, 4, 5 degrees, which is just delivering that much loft on it.
It's you hear commentators and stuff, and they sort of lambast the Tigers and the Rorys, and it's kind of stopped over the last few years, really, for getting like jacked, and they think everyone should just be like, back in the day and just swing freely and never hit a gym in your life. It sounds like to me that you boys are saying that although like Niemann's not obviously a gym bunny, well, he might be a gym bunny, I don't know, but he's not like selling Nike t-shirts. But it sounds like he's putting his body in positions which sound like they're going to get more injury than, say, a Rory or a Brooks or a Tiger.
Well, it's one of those things. It's you kind of just have to wait and see how it pans out. I mean, you'd expect it to put more stress on his lumbar region, but he is a bit of a gym bunny. There's a small segment on it on Friday, partly talking about his swing and how much he does to protect his body. But I feel like there's definitely swings out there that you look at and think that's a lot of stress to put your body under when these guys are hitting, 2,000 balls a week. But I feel like you'd probably have to wait and see how it turns out, especially because he is quite in tune with his training. And I don't know, maybe he's got a great PT and maybe he's got 14 ribs down there or something, and he's just very
I mean, DJ, he's been doing a similar move for like 15 years, hasn't he now? And he's not really got injured in his back, which is where you'd think it might present an issue. And he's another one who's just got a huge amount of right side bend. And
but it was an absolute
amazing,
lesson in ball striking, wasn't it? I mean, from him and Young, to be fair. I mean, Young had it easy, I suppose, because he was always just like one or two shots behind. So there was none of the sort of pressure that came with, well, not as much as pressure that came with Niemman, but it was a lesson in getting ahead. And I mean, it was quite nice to watch him grind out because Jeff Shackelford put out in his quadrilateral, he was like, oh, the ball's going too far and it's thing because he's got to 21 under after 46 holes or something like that. But the reality is, like, they thought he was going to obliterate the record of Lanny Watkins, whenever it was, which was 20 under. But the reality was that Riv showed its teeth to Niemman in the end, and he just kind of had to grind his way home. And it was good to watch. I enjoyed it. I liked seeing Morikawa. His chip-ins were absurd.
Talk about an assassin. I mean, like he just kind of comes from nowhere, doesn't he? Even he's doesn't seem to be kicking about much on day one and day two, but then just posted 66 in the final round. All of a sudden, it's like, the guy really wasn't that far away from winning it.
Yeah,
and I mean, to see him, Hovland again. Like, there's just some really exciting young players who aren't taking it easy after a win. They're just back there a few weeks later, just
Yeah. Well, and Morikawa did a similar thing in the desert as well on the DP World Tour swing. I mean, he didn't hit the ball nearly as well, by his standards, obviously, nearly as well as he's accustomed to, but he was thereabouts, on Saturdays and Sundays. As you said, he's a killer. And actually, this week, what's interesting was Morikawa actually putted surprisingly well. I mean, one thing I would say is he's trending very much in the right direction. I mean, he's not hitting the ball nearly as well as he did 2 years ago, and he's got a win already in the last 6 months, and then posted some good results. So this week he had another good putting week, gained over a shot in the field, which he's only done 6 times in his career. Of which those 6 events he's had win, second, tied second. So it goes to show that
knowledge bomb.
His ball striking is never far away, is it? Like,
if he gets hot with the putter, I mean, he could easily eclipse what Rahm did last year and what DJ did 2 years before.
Yeah, he's the young guys coming through. Hovland again it was probably I imagine he finished him with a 70 and being in the final group, having eyes on Niemman. You would have thought that he maybe pushed a little harder, having been there and won a Niemann's won before, but having won a couple more competitions, you'd have thought that he maybe could have put a bit more pressure on the two that were a bit more inexperienced. But it was good watching. What do we think of Riv?
Oh, I loved it. And
it looks amazing, doesn't it?
It does. And I love what, again, not to heap praise on the PGA Tour where it's undue, but I think their new deal, they got a deal with CBS who are covering the Genesis over the last 2 years. And I think it's improved a lot. We got a lot more floor cams, we got more wide angle shots. Yeah, I thought the broadcast was way better, and it's so much better to watch a course that, you know, if you are into golf properly, it's so much more rewarding watching a course that actually differentiates between good golf and bad golf, like Riv does.
Yeah, tight. You know, it's much tighter. There's smaller greens. Okay, the greens actually seem quite receptive.
Do you think? I thought they looked
in the early days.
But they firmed up Saturday and Sunday.
They did firm up, but yeah, you know, Niemman, let's face it, he's got a flat ball flight and he took it to pieces day one and day two. Like, there weren't rock hard greens, but yeah, it's still a really good test of golf. And you know, I know Jenks was making jokes about Cameron Young, but yeah, Niemann's not a bomber. Colin Morikawa's not a bomber. And it's not like I've got anything against bombers, but it's just showing, you know, that narrative of like, oh, it's only about distance. Doesn't always, you know, ring true. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah,
I think it's quickly becoming one of the events to watch early season. Yeah. You can put it in there with, you know, the Arnold Palmer, the players, as in kind of pre-major New Year events. I think it's really getting there.
And of course, it'd be remiss not to mention the host. We've already talked about it on the podcast before, but Tiger, you know, back in the broadcast booth, looking relatively healthy. You know, his typical
getting harassed by Jim Nance for a day.
Kind of quite reticent, really, wasn't he? But
he was talking about rolling the ball back, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Gave it he reckons they need to put more spin on it, which is his first real sort of take on actually giving an opinion on it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's either because he's decided he doesn't want to play anymore. Or...
I think the messing. I mean, I don't know. It's a delicate one, and I think weirdly, as we were talking about, because it's been so eventful with the PGA and the SGL, we've kind of sidelined a lot of the distance debate, which took over a lot of 2020 and 2021. You know, we had the USGA report and RNA report, so I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a bit more of that come back. But yeah, I think if you mess with the ball, with the spin rate, and put it back to, you know, more what it was like in the 90s with that Balata, I think you run the risk of not destroying, but hampering a lot of players who have grown up with the hard ball that doesn't spin as much. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence you've got Rahm, Morikawa, Hovland, who are all, you know, get a crazy amount of bow in their lead wrist and then take a lot of loft off. I think if you gave them a ball that span more, spun more, they'd struggle. In the same way that players didn't really come across from the 90s to 2000.
They're fighting tooth and nail, aren't they, to keep it, and it being lobbied by all the golf companies. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that in the next 6 months, certainly. But Tiger wasn't really giving much away, was he? I mean, people are trying desperately to get some sort of information about if he's going to play. We've got to think he's probably going to. The one course he could definitely get round is St Andrews.
Well, so this is what I was thinking about, because he talked about it with, you know, Faldo was in the background kind of murmuring under his breath as he normally does. But Tiger was saying that...
Debutant taking more shots, I like it.
Yeah, Tiger was saying it was more about kind of his ankle flexion and how he deals with, you know, his ability for the ankle to absorb that force. So I would have thought that St Andrews was a pretty poor fit, because even though it's flat on the macro scale, having to deal with all those humps through your ankle, I don't think he can play that. I think because he said, I can play, you know, you can stand on the range and hit 100, 200 balls, but you can't walk 18 holes yet.
Yeah, it's the walking's the issue, not the swinging necessarily, I think. And you got to think from that standpoint, Augusta would be a real stretch. But look, I mean, you can never write this guy off. And if there are two venues that are particularly near and dear to him, I think Augusta is one of them, and the 150th at St Andrews would be the big one. So, yeah, I think I think we're all pretty cautiously optimistic that he'll be there for that.
Yeah, well, and it was good seeing him, and he did look in decidedly better shape than when he was there last year.
Yeah,
I can't believe he mentioned that.
Last year he did not look great, did he?
No, but it was directly after it, wasn't he? Driving back from it, wasn't it? The car crash.
Yeah. So it was. Yeah. He was filming a series with golf.com or whatever, where he's teaching some celebrities. But, yeah, I mean, as I said, cautiously optimistic, because what is this? He had a layoff in 2010 and then again in 2014, 2015, and then another couple of surgeries. I mean, the amount of times he's come back now, I've given up trying to predict it. I feel like it's just a
fool's errand, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's certainly something for us to keep an eye out over the next few weeks. Of course, we've got the Honda next week, so I can't imagine we're going to be podcasting about the Honda, but we will be dropping a podcast in the meantime. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much, Ed Jenks, for joining us on your debut pod.
Thanks, Alan.
Great debut, I thought.
Yeah, and I think we'll forward all the emails of complaint your way, and you can deal with Phil Mickelson comments there. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for joining us, and until next time.
Adios.
Watch this.